So perhaps the biggest thing in the news right now is the ouster of the Speaker of the House in the American Congress. His name is Representative McCarthy. So this is the first time that a Speaker of the Speaker of the House is in order of succession, President, Vice President, Speaker of the House. So if the President and Vice President were somehow tragically killed, Speaker of the House, third in line, he would take over as President. This is a big, big deal. Now, if you remember back in January, the Speaker of the House, it took 5 days to get him elected. It took 15 different votes to get him elected. And so that was it took a while, but there was a procedural kind of thing. And part of the hang up was that any one member, there was language in there that any one member could call to vote to remove him. Now, it was uncommon. It had never happened. Well, it had happened one time 100 years ago, but the person wasn't removed. They were voted, but they weren't removed from office. McCarthy was removed. Okay, so we're going to watch this video clip, and then I'm going to give you a lot of background pieces to help you understand why this is absolutely terrible for Ukraine. It creates a great deal of uncertainty, and you might not get better than McCarthy. So here we go. This is ABC News.
Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
So it's declared vacant. Now, the only thing the House can do is actually
declared.
The only thing the House can do at this point is actually vote for a new speaker. They can't do any other legislation. They're barred from doing anything by law.
Vacant. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy now faces his final day in the third most important job in American politics, as he has just been ousted as Speaker, a historic vote and a move that hasn't happened, as we mentioned, in more than 100 years. Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl with us, along with our Rachel Bade, contributing political correspondent, also former Representative of New York Congressman John Katko, and contributor and former Senator of North Dakota Heidi Heitkamp. John, I'll start with you. More than 100 years since this has happened, and back then it failed. Tonight it didn't. Just put into perspective of what happened here tonight and the different turn that this took from the last time it was attempted in 1910.
I mean, we throw around terms like historic and unprecedented, but this is historic and entirely without precedent in the entire history of the United States of America and the U.S. Congress. We have never seen a Speaker of the House removed. It's only the third time that we've even seen an attempt, an actual roll call vote to remove a Speaker of the House. It's really quite a moment to behold. It's an outgrowth of the way former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy became the Speaker. He, of course, had to go through 15 rounds of balloting, won a very narrow victory, and only won that victory by granting a series of concessions to rebels within his own party, to Republican holdouts. And those concessions included what made this possible, the idea that a single member of the House could raise his or her hand and call for what is now we all know is known as a motion to vacate, a vote to remove the Speaker.
Okay, that's something that historically had been there. I'm nerding out here for a moment. I did my dissertation on the U.S. Constitution, and so this is right up my alley. So that's something that was in place before Pelosi. Pelosi removed it, and the Republicans in January fought to bring it back, and Matt Gaetz decided to use it to blow up the system. Okay, so let's move on a little bit here. Why is this important? I said yesterday when I did the breaking news thing that McCarthy actually is in Ukraine's corner, and people would push back on me. I'm going to defend my point. McCarthy has supported Ukraine, just like other Republicans, like mainstay Republicans, like Mitch McConnell, the minority leader in the Senate, has supported Ukraine. So has McCarthy. Here is McCarthy back in May when he was asked if, well, I'm just going to play it.
Вячеслав Тартаковский, РИА Новости, Russia. We know that you don't support the current unlimited and uncontrolled supplies of weaponry and aid to Ukraine. So, can you comment, is it possible if in the near future the US policy regarding sending weaponry to Ukraine will change?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The sound here is not good. Did he say, I don't support aid to Ukraine? No, I vote for aid for Ukraine. I support aid for Ukraine. I do not support what your country has done to Ukraine. I do not support your killing of the children either. And I think for one standpoint, you should pull out. And I don't think it's right. And we will continue to support because the rest of the world sees it just as it is.
Let me replay that again.
No, I vote for aid for Ukraine. I support aid for Ukraine. I do not support what your country has done to Ukraine. I do not support your killing of the children either.
Okay, so McCarthy has been supporting Ukraine. Well, why wasn't it in the budget? Because he has an insurrection from his side, his party. He's fighting this little, very vocal minority that, well, did what they just did to him, including Matt Gaetz and some others. Now, what happened wasn't necessarily because of Ukraine, but because of other politicians. And it's hard to explain here. This is Patrick McHenry. Now, he is the president pro tem of the House of Representatives. He's got the coolest name ever, Patrick McHenry. So, I mean, in American politics, Patrick Henry was a huge looming figure. But here's how he takes over, because he was the next person in line directed to be taking over. And he has, well, let's hear.
Chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call
Watch
of the
this.
chair.
Yeah, he's mad. He's mad. And there's a reason that he's mad. As a Republican, I'm pretty mad, right? Like, we're being so stupid in the way that we're handling things. It's a bad look to be a Republican right now. Okay, here's McCarthy talking about what happened. McCarthy is not going to be running for election again, well, that's what he said. He's not going to run again.
If you were conservative and you only had one entity making the battle and you vote against securing the border, you vote against cutting this wasteful spending, and then you partner with all the Democrats. Now you'll phrase it all the other different ways. That's not a conservative. Look, you all know Matt Gaetz. You know it was personal. It had nothing to do about spending. It had nothing to do about everything he accused somebody of, he was doing. It all was about getting attention from you.
Okay, so let's stop there. Matt Gaetz is an interesting character. He's fundraising, making lots of money off of what just happened, and it's personal. Matt Gaetz doesn't like McCarthy. McCarthy's not as pure as he should be. Matt Gaetz claims to be a purist of some sort. I don't like the guy. He's a purist in the Trump kind of purist kind of way, and that's a bad kind of purist. There's right, and then there's what people keep calling far right, which what they mean is like Trump-like MAGA kind of something. And Gaetz isn't kind of cut out of that kind of cloth, but he never liked McCarthy. McCarthy doesn't like him, so there is something personal. But so there's a difference. So I'm a conservative. But I recognize that what Russia did to Ukraine is absolutely terrible. It's horrifying. And I asked myself, what would Ronald Reagan do? The answer became crystal clear. He would support Ukraine against Russia's tyranny. So there are conservatives like me that are out there. McCarthy was in that kind of camp. Well, why didn't he let Zelensky speak when he came to Washington? Look, he was fighting he had a pretty tough line, and look, he got pushed over the edge. The proof's in the pudding why he had to be very careful with that last week or 2 weeks ago. So now I had a friend who worked on Capitol Hill, and I asked him about the representative that he worked for. He said, well, he's a prostitute, but he gets things done, right? I asked him about his previous boss, who he liked, and thought was like this really great guy. He said, well, he was a stud, but he never got anything done. That's the difference between McCarthy and Gates. McCarthy would make deals and try to work with the other side. Now, from their perspective, he's not working with the other side, but he was at least trying to pass legitimate legislation by, we get some, you get some, that kind of thing. Okay, let's keep going. Here is Speaker Gingrich. He's the former Speaker of the House back in the Clinton administration.
26% of the Republicans voted for McCarthy. 4% voted against him. From my position as a longtime Republican activist, they're traitors. All 8 of them should, in fact, be primaried. They should all be driven out of public life.
So what he's talking about was there was all Democrats voted against McCarthy, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. Like McCarthy, if you care about Ukraine, McCarthy actually was trying to provide aid to Ukraine. Every Democrat voted against McCarthy. So what are you going to get? Are you going to get somebody better that's more pro-Ukraine? So they voted against their own interests. But so did the 8 Republicans. 4% of the Republican caucus that was there voted against it, and all the Democrats plus 4% of Republicans was enough to put McCarthy out.
What they did was to go to the other team to cause total chaos. We ought to be focusing on Biden. We ought to be focusing on the economy.
Okay, so for a Republican to be saying we ought to be focusing on Biden, or for a Democrat to be saying the opposite, that's fair. This is how politics works. But 4% of Republicans and all the Democrats caused what just happened to happen.
Be focusing on the border. Instead, you're going to get a week or 10 days of the media focusing on Republican disarray. It's an astonishingly destructive behavior by a handful of egocentric people who think they're superior to 96% of the conference.
Yeah, they are egocentric. Here's Matt Gaetz. Here is what he had to say about this in the process.
President Trump, though, put on Truth Social that he didn't think this was a good idea. He didn't want to see Republicans fighting with other Republicans. How do you respond to the former president?
Did you catch that? Even Trump said he didn't think this was a good idea. Like, okay, I'm going to show you what Trump said, and I'm going to show you what the Democrats said on the Daily Beast.
We haven't spoken during that.
President Trump, though, put on Truth Social that he didn't think this was a good idea. He didn't want to see Republicans fighting with other Republicans. How do you respond to the former president?
I would say that my conversations with the former president leave me with great confidence that I'm doing the right thing. We haven't spoken during that.
That he's doing the right thing because he had spoken with the former president before. Here's on Truth Social, Donald Trump. Why is it that Republicans are always fighting amongst themselves? Why aren't they fighting the radical left Democrats who are destroying our country? Right? And again, I don't fault him for having that position, just like I wouldn't fault Biden for having the opposite position. But here's what the Democrats had to say, or the Democratic perspective. This is in the Daily Beast. Okay, Daily Beast is a very left-leaning magazine or newspaper. Democrats blew a huge political win by not saving Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. Wait a minute. Thought he was a Republican. Yes, he is a Republican, but are you going to do better as far as however you're going to be able to get along? Okay, for the first time in United States history, the Speaker of the House of Representatives has been removed from his post. And while you can't blame Democrats for the blow that right-wing bomb throwers landed on Kevin McCarthy, what you can say is that they failed to do the right thing on behalf of the American people. By voting no on the procedural motion to table Rep. Matt Gaetz's motion and then voting yes on his motion to vacate the office of the Speaker, Democrats effectively voted for Gaetz, and a vote for Gaetz is a vote for chaos. Look, I understand why Democrats don't like Kevin McCarthy. I really do. And he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs about all the issues with McCarthy. If I was a Democrat, I'd feel the same way. I get it. Okay. But as Washington Monthly's Bill Scher, who concedes there's plenty to dislike about Kevin McCarthy, writes, the now deposed Speaker, quote, has proven willing to take political risks. Like, he was still supporting Ukraine, even though there was a very fractured caucus that he was trying to lead. And he was, okay, I'm not going to belabor that. Most Democrats presumably want to help Ukraine fend off Russian invasion. If so, it's hard to imagine a Gates-backed speaker helping fund Ukraine's war efforts to the degree that McCarthy has. Let me read that again. Most Democrats presumably want to help Ukraine fend off Russia's invasion. If so, it's hard to imagine a Gates-backed speaker helping fund off Ukraine's war efforts to the degree that McCarthy has. It's like he's actually been there. He's more cut out of my cloth in the sense that he was there trying to support Ukraine. Although Democrats aren't to blame for this chaos, they have a moral obligation to strive for the best outcome for America, and based on likely alternatives, Speaker McCarthy is probably as good as it gets. Again, that's from a Democratic perspective, as good as it gets for what their priorities are. Again, doing the right thing wouldn't have necessitated voting for McCarthy. Just skipping the vote or voting present would have been enough to lower the threshold and allow McCarthy to survive, because the vote wouldn't have gotten out on the floor to begin with. But Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat minority leader in the House of Representatives, actually urged his members to vote for this. Okay, that's where we are, and we're going to be watching to see what happens. This is important. If a anti-Ukraine or pro-Russian, or however you want to describe it, Speaker of the House comes to power, it can make it very, very tricky for the next year. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's something to watch. All right, I'll keep you updated. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.